Hello, fellow witches and warlocks and other magical beings. My name is Les, and I am a witchcraft enthusiast myself. Today's topic, we will be discussing Maleficent, one of the most notorious villains popularized by Disney. Over the course of time, Disney villains have often been portrayed as scary, vengeful, and usually are depicted as the antithesis to the Disney princess, whom we are told to feel sorry for and root for above all other characters. They often have soft features and physicality, typically beautiful by societal standards. Slender, doughy-eyed, while usually dependent on someone to save them from, say, an evil sea witch or a jealous queen, or in this case, a villainous fairy. In contrast, the stereotypical villain is dark and scary, a menacing evil being, usually a woman, that by appearance is intimidating and harsh on the eyes. In other words, she's considered to be ugly. Maleficent embodies these characteristics, and in the original Disney movie, she curses the innocent Aurora into an eternal sleep out of spite and envy, unless the girl receives the kiss of her one true love. In typical Disney fashion, usually the prince saves her. This is a story we have heard throughout most of our lives, but I have questions. In fact, I have many, and I would like to discuss and explore them in today's video. So let's talk about the backstory of Maleficent. I should preface this by inserting a major trigger warning, as the following subject matter does contain highly sensitive topics, including RAPE, sexism, and violence. However, it is very pertinent and relevant to Maleficent's backstory and her origins, which are laced with incredible darkness and themes of macabre. In 1959's Disney interpretation of Sleeping Beauty, it depicts Maleficent as a self-proclaimed mistress of all evil. However, her sinful self-awareness is actually a result of a history that delves much deeper than her simply being a one-dimensional villainess popularized by mainstream culture. In the earliest known version of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent appears in the story Sun, Moon, and Talia by Giambattista Basile, where she was in fact a queen, betrayed, and as the famous adage goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Her husband, the king, cheats on her and opts for a much younger princess, Talia, where they have 2 children. The queen, of course, is very upset by this and decides to seek revenge on the king and order that the children be fed to her husband, creating a large fire, and have the princess be cast and burned alive. As many fairy tales follow similar plot patterns, the queen is not only banished but killed, and the princess Talia is saved by the king as well as her children, spared from a terrible and gruesome death. Now, here is where the world meets the queen, who is painted to be a spiteful, mad woman that resorts to violence and extreme measures without the king having to reap any of the consequences of his actions for cheating, lying, and betraying his wife. I'm not condoning what she was gonna do, because that is very extreme. The death of the younger wife's children is in no way acceptable, but it is questionable that he himself is not even reprimanded for any of his behavior. Fast forward to Charles Perrault's version of the 17th century tale, The Sleeping Beauty in the Wood. A similar tale is woven with the queen as the main antagonist or villain, but this time she's not only murderous, but she's also part fairy, part ogre, in addition to being jealous, spiteful, and hysterical. So we've added that physical element, which portrays her to be more intimidating, more frightening to look at, along with these characteristics that aren't good. Perrault's interpretation portrays the queen as being greedy for money, selfish, and gluttonous for the blood of children. She is not even mourned by her own son after her dramatic death, when she ultimately dives into a pit filled with snakes and other horrid creatures originally meant for the princess's children. One thing to note here is that during an evening where the youngest princess is gifted with presents from the other fairies, they give her gifts such as the ability to sing, to walk with grace, to be beautiful, adding to the notion that women are simply to be treated as dolls, obedient with little to no agency. The final concluding lines of the story goes as follows. No one dared to tell her son when the ogress, all enraged to see what had happened, threw herself head foremost into the tub and was instantly devoured by the ugly creatures she had ordered to be thrown into for the others. The king could not be very sorry, for she was his mother, but he soon confronted himself with his beautiful wife and his pretty children. Once again, we see that strong, often betrayed women by their loved ones are depicted as frightening, not conventionally attractive, and usually deserving of a terrible death. Moving forward a few decades to the story of Maleficent, 1959 Disney's version. History and culture changes a little bit, and so does the narrative of Sleeping Beauty. She is still the evil antagonist and depicted as evil. Children, myself included, feared her as she cursed the ever so beautiful Sleeping Beauty without much reason other than jealousy. And so she's still portrayed as this one-dimensional character, or no other features or reasons or motives for why she's doing what she's doing. And this is where things get a little interesting, and people have really kind of started to delve into why are Disney female villains portrayed this way. In the article written by Jacob Knudsen, The Evolution of the Evil Disney Villain Maleficent, he states, "She still acts out of pure spite with no explanation as to why she detests the royal family. Maleficent is simply evil and wreaks havoc for the sake of wreaking havoc. She has no friends or allies. Her crow is a servant, as are her goblins, when she governs with fear. Detonative signifiers are again used to clearly portray Maleficent as the villain, and other signifiers such as isolation, anger, all black attire, black castle, horns, evil laugh, fire. The list goes on and on. And that's how we are perceiving this as an audience. We automatically know with these cues that this particular character is just evil, plain and simple. There is no reason for it. So that is how she's portrayed in that original Disney movie that we all probably seen growing up. So moving along forward into the 2010s, where things start to progress and we see a really big movement with women's rights being more recognized along with minorities and so forth. Popular culture, mainstream culture has seemingly started to move forward a little bit. And so we get the 2014 version with Angelina Jolie as her portrayal of the evil queen. The character is finally, however, given a proper, well-deserved redemption arc, where she is no longer stereotyped, and yet they still continue to call her the evil fairy, but some changes have been made. So the movie gave her a sort of anti-hero story arc that made her a hero turned evil. She becomes a complicated character nonetheless, with a little bit more depth. She's not simply an embodiment of evil, but a relatable character who has human flaws. Jeffrey Jerome Chone writes, in Monster Theory, all cultures can be analyzed and understood based on the monsters they create and champion. Monsters are an embodiment of the other, reflecting society's underlying fears and anxieties. So what does Maleficent's sudden reemergence as a sympathetic anti-hero mean for modern audiences? So now we're gonna just conclude here, and I think that as we get into Disney female antagonists have been depicted as evil for reasons that are often not really justified, but yet we accept them. And there's a common narrative repeatedly sold to audiences that these women deserve their fate, and that the princess should ride off into the sunset with her prince. Maleficent was a victim of her circumstances, as early literature shows. She reacted to how she was treated. Not that any of her other extreme actions are necessarily justifiable, however, other characters are never reprimanded for their actions. Strong, independent women are often painted as ugly in physicality to further reinforce the stereotype of evil. Beautiful equals good, ugly equals bad. However, as the recent adaptation of Maleficent's story tries to flip the script a little bit, it's a step in the right direction to strip those stereotypes placed on female villains. Anyways, this is what I've been able to gather, and didn't want to make this too long. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was a little insightful, and I don't know about you, but I am so pleased to see the veil being stripped of these somewhat dangerous stereotypes, especially with younger audiences. I'm Les, and I am signing off. Bye!